Well, it's that time again. Taki is rocking the new Anbernic device, and it has a few features that I think you're going to be very interested in. This video is going to be a first look, in-depth review of the RG503. Typically when these devices go on sale, I will have a full review waiting for all of you to watch, but unfortunately, that is not the case with this one. Ever since I had the audacity to review the RG552 for what it actually is, I've been blacklisted from this company, even though I've reviewed something like 10 of their devices. This means that I won't have reviews ready for you when these products drop, but I will have them eventually, and I hope that they're still useful for you to decide on whether or not you should buy these devices. I purchased the device that you see here on my own, and in this video, we're going to do a full coverage of everything that you need to know before you buy one. So let's get started by going over the build and controls of the RG503. The RG503 is one of the most radical changes that the company has ever done to their landscape design since the RG350 launched over 2 years ago. Some aspects of this design should be familiar to most of you. The left side is pretty much standard fare at this point, with the select button at the top, followed by a D-pad and an analog on the bottom with L3 functionality. On the right side, we have a start button, an LED indicator light, a set of ABXY buttons, and another analog with R3 functionality. Now, typically the D-pads from this company are usually the same, and that's the case here with how the D-pad looks, but it's not quite the same in the feel of the button itself. The amount of pressure required to make input is standard, but when we go to pivot, there's a slight grinding noise you can hear in the frame, and I'm going to record that while we see it. To illustrate this, we'll take a look at the profile of the device. Input is pretty good. And here's the RG350P for comparison, but the difference is when we go to pivot. So if you're pivoting around like this, I can feel and hear the grinding noise on the inside, and I'm going to record the audio and let you hear it for yourself. And we'll do the same thing on the RG350P. And just for kicks, here is the 280. Now, it might be the case that the sound will go away as the button gets more use, but it was definitely noticeable when I used it. The right side of the device is also interesting. We have a set of painted ABXY buttons, and you might recall these because they are no doubt the same buttons that were used on the RG552 with a different coat of paint. In terms of input, I don't have anything bad to say about this, except they do feel like they are grinding against the shell due to the aforementioned paint, but the buttons themselves feel almost identical to how they are on most of the company's products. You will just need to be aware that these buttons will grind on the front shell a lot while you're using this device. This is how my unit looks from only 1 day of use. Now, if we look at the devices from top down, you can see that we still have inline shoulder buttons, but they are slightly flared than what they usually look like. We have a slight bulge on the side, which would have been nice to see with stacked shoulder buttons. I know it's kind of a meme at this point that the company is allergic to stacked shoulder buttons, and maybe someday we'll get there, but not on this device. One cool thing that you need to notice, and the reason why I pulled out this device specifically, is that it was the last really cheap device that the company put out that had HDMI output. There are other devices that they sell that have this, but they're more expensive. You'll notice that this does have HDMI. So on the top of the device, we have our inline shoulder buttons that I've just talked about, and a USB port that doubles as a DC charging port. We have an HDMI port, a headphone jack, and an OTG port. Now I want to talk about the shoulder buttons themselves because this is something that is slightly strange. And for that, we're going to need to get a profile shot going. So here are the buttons, and at first glance this might not seem that strange, but what you have to realize is that this top part is not level. It's slanted. But typically on these devices, it is level. For example, we could stand this device on the top without these buttons, and it would be fine. But on this, the whole frame is tilted forward, and these buttons are also tilted forward. What that means is when you have your finger on the device, it's going to be slightly shifted forward, and it makes for an awkward grip when you have that back grip here. Even though I like stacked shoulder buttons, I like the inline shoulder buttons that this company uses a lot more than this. I wish that this was completely level. It doesn't make sense to me why this panel is slanted up. It's not comfortable. When I have the device held in my hand, I find my fingers are closer to my face instead of being parallel to the bottom of the device. When I'm gripping the device, I can't get my finger to sit where it feels the most natural, and I end up with this kind of claw grip. It's not like this at all on the RG350P. Just to illustrate what I'm talking about, I put this level on here, and you can see that this is really not level. We can compare this to the RG552, and we can see for all intents and purposes that this is basically level as it is on the RG350P. Super not level. So now you know what I'm talking about. This back panel is also a big change. This time around, we have grips with a slightly textured print to them. I actually like this, and I think it's a lot better than these pieces of rubber that can kind of get dirty as time goes on. This doesn't do anything except basically keep your fingers from slipping, but this actually does do something. You can get a bit of a grip here. It's not the best in the world, and I wish it was a bit bigger than this, but it is nice nevertheless. You'll also notice that this is the blue version of the RG503. This is actually the color that I suggested to be used on the RG552 because I really like it, and there are no complaints here. This is that kind of GPD fake metallic paint that Anbernic started to use with the RG552. I'm willing to accept it because I like this color so much, so I'm not going to complain too much. Now, let's boot the device up to look at the OS that comes with this device. My unit came with a 16GB SD card for the OS. Typically what you'll see with these devices is that you'll have a collection of ROMs that come with the device, which is a selling point for some people. Now when we pop into the UI, you'll see that we're in the Anbernic theme, and I don't like this layout. I think it's too dark for this screen. Thankfully we can change this inside the settings. There's a PlayStation theme, a carbon one, but I think this one is the best one. Now let's talk about the screen. So here are two devices side by side. They're both at their maximum brightness setting, and if I'm looking at this in person, the RG552 is without a doubt the brighter screen. But there's one other interesting thing here. If we go into the settings, we can turn this all the way down. You can see it's pretty dark. We can do the same thing on the new device and turn the brightness all the way down. You can see it doesn't quite get as dark, and I've said this many times. I like to use my devices at night, and I don't like them to be very bright, so I'm not bothering anybody around me. And this is a really high minimum brightness threshold. Its maximum brightness isn't that high, and the minimum brightness isn't that low. The situation is completely different on the RG552, where it can get pretty dark, and that's a big problem for me that I've seen so far. The device is also not as bright as some of the cheaper handhelds in this generation. The maximum brightness on the 2 Plus is higher than the RG503, and it has a better color temperature in my opinion. The 503 screen is quite cool in comparison. When it comes to the image quality of the screen itself, it's pretty good. It's an OLED screen, so you're going to have deep blacks with good viewing angles. There's just one more point that I want to go over before we start talking about the emulation performance. I have noticed that the edge of this screen is not connected as much as it should be to the frame. If you look in the corner, you can see there's a slight gap on the right side. It's bigger than it is on the left side, and it has some junk in there, and it's very difficult to get out. This pretty much guarantees that I would never put this device in my pocket because I would always be thinking about all the lint that is going to get stuck in this gap that I'll only be able to remove after doing a full teardown. On the topic of brightness, I found one interesting thing. If you look here, this is the maximum brightness. If I single press the power button to put the device to sleep, you'll see that it gets brighter for a moment. So the screen does have the ability to go brighter. If we look again, you can see it go much brighter than it is right now. So I don't really know what's going on here if they're intentionally locking away that much potential. It definitely does get much brighter than stock, and I wish it did get brighter because it needs to be brighter. It's too dim at the highest setting. I need to take some time to do some measurements, but I would say that this is like 100 to 200 nits. It's not high, and you can forget about using this outside in daylight. Now that we've finished talking about the physical aspects of the device, let's go over the specs. The RG503 is powered by the RK3566 CPU with 4 Cortex-A55 cores clocked at 1.9 GHz. Our GPU is a Mali-G52 MP2, and we have a whopping 1 GB of LPDDR4 RAM. For storage, we have 16 GB of SD card storage with no internal eMMC. We have a 3500 mAh battery, a 4.95-inch 544p OLED screen, and Wi-Fi 5 and Bluetooth 4.2 for connectivity. For now, this device only runs on Linux. What I want to know is whether or not this device is better than the RG351, because I think that's a device that many people are looking to upgrade from. And on paper, the RK3566 should be a much better device. Let's start looking at some retro gaming using SNES. Here we have DKC2, and the game performs well. By default, the device is set to full screen everything, even though the game itself is not a native 16:9 one. We will change that in just a moment, but I started noticing some popping sounds while I was monitoring this recording. Let me try and isolate some instances so you can hear it for yourself. You shouldn't need headphones for this. It will sound like an occasional crackle. I found it is easier to hear it if I just leave the character still. I I thought this was from my audio cable, but it unfortunately is not. I can hear this popping sound even without the headphones plugged in, including over HDMI. This led me to believe that we have some refresh rate issues on this device, but it turns out that that's not the case, so I'm not sure what is happening here. While we are on the topic of sound, I found that the speakers on this device are not particularly tuned well. It seems to me like they just did a 10 to 15 dB boost on the audio signal, and it gets very distorted at or near maximum volume. I'll let you hear for yourself. Not good. Sound issues aside from the speakers and from the headphone jack, retro games that play well on the 351p also run well here. One issue that I did find when we're playing these retro systems is that there seems to be some slight screen stuttering over HDMI, even for simple games. I noticed it immediately while checking for some sound issues, and I was able to find one game where it's clear as day that there is a problem. As long as you do not stop moving in one direction while you're playing this game, the background and all of the sprites should smoothly flow across your screen, but you can see that they are chugging across the screen. It's strange because our FPS is fine, so this might just be some issue related to the HDMI signal itself. I can't notice these kinds of issues when I'm playing on the device without a TV. To see the real benefit of this platform, we need to go to more demanding systems. Let's look at N64 first. At first glance, this intro to Ocarina of Time does not instill confidence, but there's a whole mess of a problem under the surface. See if you can see and hear what happens after I start pressing a button on the device. The FPS magically goes back to normal, but the moment I let go, it goes back to being a PowerPoint. This can even happen in something easy like the File Select menu. Let's change to a different core that has a percentage on the bottom left corner. PowerPoint. No PowerPoint. PowerPoint. No PowerPoint. The interesting thing about this problem is that not all games have this issue. Here's Super Mario 64 running without any problems, and this includes the times when I do not press a button. Now let's move over to Dreamcast. At least with this first game, I can tell that the performance is much better than it would be on the 3326 at the same resolution, but we also can use widescreen hacks. There's still some slowdown in Sonic, but Soul Calibur is much better. Again, this is at a higher resolution than it would be on 3326 devices. I also found good performance with Pod Racer, but the controls were a bit wonky. Dead or Alive 2 has some minor slowdown, but it still looks great. Crazy Taxi 2 also runs well. I did want to try out Sega Saturn emulation, but none of the controls would work when I booted up a game, so we will have to put this on hold for now. PS1 is another system that I was really looking forward to testing. By default, these games are going to run at 1x native resolution, but you can use the enhanced resolution option inside this core for better picture quality. I'm not sure if all PS1 games will work with this setting, but the ones that I used had no issues. I was about to finish off this section, but our old friend came back to greet us.
To rescue Harry from his prison. Harry told them all about Dobby's warning.
It seems that this intro sequence is a bit too demanding when we are not pressing any buttons.
Can you think of anyone at school with a grudge?
Strangely, the main game seems to have no issues. Given that we have a PS Vita screen with 2x native resolution of the PSP, let's try out some games at 2x native in PPSSPP. With Crisis Core, we have no issues. We see the same thing with Daxter. When we go to something that is a bit more demanding, we have some slight slowdown that we could probably fix by going to 1x, but big PSP games are too much even at 1x. With some workarounds, we can make God of War playable at 1x native, but our FPS is capped at around 20. The PSP library is huge, so I'm not able to say how many games will run at 2x, but it should be a lot more than can run at 1x on the 3326. Just when I was about to round out this section, our old friend showed up again. This is kind of annoying because it's hard to judge the real performance of this device with issues like this. So I think it's time to wrap up with the teardown and my pros and cons of this device. Let's look inside the RG503 to see what they did. A few things that I want to point out. We have our CPU, RAM, and an outline for an eMMC module that was supposed to come with this device with Android 11. I have no idea why they scrapped that idea and bumped the RAM down to 1 GB, but they did. We have a better Wi-Fi module in the corner, and we have the same rumble motor that they always use. They seem to have skimped out on the battery that should have come with this device, and you don't have to look any further than the outline that they made to hold it. This 3,500 mAh battery is the kind that the company typically uses in their smaller devices, and I don't think that it's doing them any favors in this device. One thing that you need to know about the 503 is that there's a ton of empty space on the inside of this device. When you take into account the size of the device compared to its weight, it feels very strange and almost like it was one of those MP4 gaming handhelds from the past. The lack of weight and the composition of the shell makes this feel cheaper than any other device from this company, and that includes the RG552. I don't know if they didn't want to pay for the MOQ for a bigger battery or not, but this could have easily had a battery twice this size with over 10 hours of gameplay, and that would have been a very cool feature. As it stands, this device pulls between 2 to 3 watts of power without Wi-Fi, so you're looking at 4 to 6 hours of battery life. Let's wrap up this review with the pros and cons of the RG503. On the pro side, I like the color scheme on this because it reminds me of the RG351 MP that came in a blue shell. Dreamcast performance is better than it was on the 3326, as is PSP performance. Our 16:9 aspect ratio screen means that we can use widescreen hacks in systems that support it, and our resolution is perfectly suited for 2x PSP. Battery life is also decent for this device, as is the thermal load. Now let's go over the cons, and as you would expect, there are a lot of them. The firmware that ships with this is clearly not ready for a retail release. In its current state, this has more objective issues than the RG552 did when it launched, and that is not a good path for the company to be on. Killing off the eMMC and shipping this device with only 1 GB of RAM means that this device is essentially hobbled for many things that would have been great on this handheld, including Android 11. The OLED screen in this device is cool, and it's something new to this market, but it falls short in its minimum and maximum brightness level. It's far too dim to realistically use in any outdoor setting during daylight hours, and there are better and brighter options on the market today. The speakers on this device were not tuned correctly, and there is significant audio distortion when the volume is above 90%. Moreover, there is audible audio crackling and popping that you can hear over the speakers, HDMI out, and through the headphone jack. Using this device with the slowdowns that occur when you are not pressing a button makes this device essentially unusable from my point of view, and it is disappointing to see that it happens the most in the platforms that should run better on this chip when compared to the RK3326 handhelds from this company. The build quality of this device does not hold up to the image that people have for this company's products, and the awkward ergonomics make it an inferior option over other handhelds from this company. Moreover, the device feels significantly cheaper than it should due to the materials that the company used for the shell and the overall weight of the device. And finally, at $150 after the 2-day promotion is over, this device is an absurd value for what you're getting here, especially when you take into account how the device is at this point. No BS about waiting around for custom firmware to fix issues. This device should not be this broken on day one, and no other product from this company ever was, RG552 included. I paid around $90 to get this locally, and even I feel like I overpaid for what I just experienced. For this asking price, you can get the significantly more powerful RP2 Plus, and you will have almost enough spare cash to pick up the Miu Mini, shipping not included. What's worse, you can spend $50 more and get a drastically better and more powerful product with the Udon Lite that should be shipping soon. That device comes with a 4G modem that doubles as a phone. For only 25% more money, you are getting 3 to 5x more performance, a brighter screen, and better Wi-Fi. There's also the Snapdragon Udon that runs Android, Windows, and very soon, Linux. If you like Linux, this will be a way better Linux handheld than the RG503, but it is around $100 more. To wrap up things, would I recommend this device to someone else? And at $150, that is a huge no. There is no way I would pick this device over something else in this generation, including the RG552. It's not as user-friendly as other RG devices that I like, and it doesn't offer enough to make it $60 more than the first device that made me like this company in the first place. If you want an RG device, there are better new and used options for you to pick from for far less money. If you really have FOMO and you have to have this device, I would say buy it from a third-party reseller of your choice. Typically, I like to only use product links that go directly to the main company so they can make the most money, but this company is super shady at best now, and clearly all that extra profit has not been going where it should with software this buggy. Anyway, I do hope you enjoyed this honest look at the RG503. The company should have another 3566 handheld that will release this year, and it's the one that I've been waiting to finally release for over 1 year. That device should be much better than this one. If you want to support work like this, I only ask that you consider subscribing to the channel. Let me know your thoughts on the 503 down below, and I'll catch you here next time with another one. Now go out and enjoy the rest of your day. Taki out.